A crime boss picks up the phone. He is sitting in his office on the 40th floor. He has one reason for making this call. His cleaning lady has missed 3 days of work. No call, no message, no explanation, nothing. In his world, that is unacceptable. It does not matter if you sweep his floors or run his crew. You do not disappear without a word, so he dials the number. His voice is already sharp, already cold, already ready to end her job with one sentence, but the person who picks up is not her. Instead, a tiny, shaking voice comes through the phone, the voice of a 5-year-old girl. And the 3 words she whispers next change everything. "Lily, Daddy, is that you?" He stops. He does not answer right away. Something in his chest tightens, and then she speaks again. "Lily, Mommy won't wake up." The office, Chicago, afternoon. His name is Marco Valent. He is 36 years old. He runs the most powerful criminal organization in the Great Lakes region. His office is on the 40th floor of Valent Tower. Leather chairs, French candles, a view of all of Chicago stretching out below him like a map he owns. On his desk, a report from his mansion's manager. One name is circled in red: Sarah Holloway, cleaning staff. Absent 3 consecutive days, no explanation given. Marco barely remembers her face. She is the quiet one, always looking down, always making herself invisible when he walks past. But now she has dared to just disappear. So he picks up the phone. He dials. He gets ready to use his coldest voice, the voice that makes grown men with guns start to sweat. And then a child answers the phone call. Marco stares at the phone, confused, then careful. "Marco, hello. Who is this?" "Lily. I'm Lily. I'm 5. Her voice is small, like a piece of paper folded in half too many times. "Marco, where is your mom, Lily?" "Lily, she's on the couch. She won't wake up. She is making a scary sound, like wheezing, and I don't know what to do. I am really scared." Marco stands up from his chair. He does not plan to. His body just does it. "Marco, Lily, I need you to do something very important. Can you tell me your address, the number on your building?" A short silence. Then she reads it out slowly, carefully, like a school exercise. The address is in one of the roughest neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago. Marco knows it immediately. It is one of the places even his own people do not want to go after dark. He is out of his chair before she finishes reading. "Marco, I am calling an ambulance right now, and then I am coming to your house. Can you open the door for me?" "Lily, yes, but sir, are you really coming? Mommy always says her boss is very busy, very important. You don't have to come if you're busy." Marco stops walking. Right there in the marble hallway, one sentence from a 5-year-old, and it cuts straight through him. She does not think someone like him would come. Her mother taught her not to expect it. "Marco, I am coming, I promise." And he realizes that is the first promise he has made in years that has nothing to do with business. The first one that is just because a scared child needs someone. Leaving the tower, Marco pushes through the glass doors of his office. He leaves the report on the desk. He leaves 3 meetings behind. He leaves 12 capos waiting in the conference room on the 39th floor for the most important meeting of the quarter. His tailored suit jacket is still draped over the back of his chair when he reaches the elevator. Raphael Briggs, his right hand for 15 years, sees him coming. "Raphael, Marco, the meeting with the capos starts in 15 minutes. Marco, cancel it." "Raphael, Victor will." "Marco, cancel it." He yanks the keys to his black car from his coat pocket. Raphael runs after him into the elevator. 15 years of instinct telling him not to let his boss go anywhere alone looking like this. He watches Marco's face reflected in the polished steel elevator doors, and he sees something he has never seen before. Not anger, not calculation. Panic, real panic. The drive Marco drives himself, something his driver has never once seen in 4 years on the job. Raphael sits in the passenger seat, one hand gripping the door, Lily's voice is still coming through the speakerphone on the dashboard. Lily, sir, are you still there? Marco, I am still here, Lily. I am on my way. Tell me something, what do you like? He does not know why he asks that. Maybe he heard somewhere that you have to keep a scared person talking. Or maybe he cannot stand the sound of her quiet crying between the silences. Lily, I like drawing. I draw butterflies. Mommy says my butterflies are the prettiest in the whole world. Marco, I bet your mommy is right. Raphael turns to look at him. He has heard Marco give orders, make threats, negotiate, even laugh once or twice dry and rare, but this voice, this soft, careful, gentle voice, in 15 years never. The car moves through downtown Chicago. Glass towers catching the afternoon sun like silver blades. Designer stores, clean sidewalks, women with expensive bags. Then, the city changes, like someone slowly turning down the lights. Buildings get shorter. Brick walls fill up with graffiti. Windows get boarded shut. Cracks run through the sidewalk like lines on an old face. People sit on stoops watching the black car slide past with eyes that are curious and cold at the same time. Marco looks out the windshield, and something simple and brutal becomes clear to him. He calls himself the man who controls this city. But he has never actually seen it. Lily, sir, Mommy is making that sound again. It's louder. Her voice breaks on the last word. Marco presses the gas harder. Marco, it is going to be okay, Lily. The ambulance is on the way. You are being very brave, you know that, braver than a lot of grown-ups, Lily, really. Marco, really, I promise. Then he glances at Raphael. His face shifts just for a second, the warmth snapping back to sharpness. Marco, call Tony. Tell him to get 2 men to this address before we arrive. I want someone there. No weapons, no attention. There is a 5-year-old child alone with her mother unconscious. I need the building to be safe when I get there. Raphael studies him for a moment, then makes the call. As he talks into the phone, he realizes something. In 15 years of taking orders from Marco Valent, this is the first order that has nothing to do with money or power or territory. The first one that is just for a child he has never met. Lily, sir, I'm hungry. Marco, I'm almost there. What is your favorite thing to eat? Lily, mac and cheese, but we're out of cheese. Marco bites down on his lower lip. Out of cheese. Not out of imported wine or French candles. Out of cheese. Something he could buy a whole factory of without ever looking at the price. The apartment building the car stops in front of a 4-story red brick building. Walls full of cracks, a rusted fire escape hanging along one side. The lower floor windows sealed with plywood. The black car, parked in front of that building, looks like 2 different worlds colliding on the same street. Marco cuts the engine, opens the door, steps out. He does not reach for his jacket. He does not check his watch. For the first time in his life, he walks into a place carrying nothing that stands for his power, just empty hands. And a promise to a 5-year-old girl waiting behind a door on the 3rd floor. The stairs creak under every step. The hallway walls are damp. The smell of mold and someone's cooking drifting from behind closed doors. A ceiling light flickers like it might give up at any moment. Raphael walks behind him, eyes sweeping every corner the way he always does. But there is no threat here. Nothing dangerous at all, except poverty that has soaked into every single brick. Marco stops at apartment number 37. Before he can even knock, the door opens, and there she is. She is smaller than he imagined. So small, he cannot understand how a body that tiny holds enough courage to pick up a phone and talk to a stranger while her mother lay unconscious behind her. Curly brown hair pulled to one side with an old elastic band that has lost all its stretch. Big green eyes, red and swollen from crying. An oversized t-shirt with a faded butterfly printed on the front. Worn flip-flops, the sole on one side almost completely gone. Lily, you really came. She does not say it like a greeting. She says it like a prayer that just got answered. Marco Valent, the man entire boardrooms stand up for when he enters, drops to one knee. Right there on that dirty hallway floor. So his face is level with hers. Behind him, Raphael breathes in sharply, but says nothing. just watches his boss, the head of the most powerful family in the Great Lakes region, kneel in front of a 5-year-old girl in a broken-down building on the south side. "Marco, I am here, Lily. Take me to your mom." Lily reaches out and wraps 2 fingers around his index and middle finger. Her hand is so small, it cannot even hold his whole hand, and she leads him inside. Inside the apartment is small, but it is clean in a way that feels almost stubborn, like the person living there spent her last bit of strength, refusing to let it fall apart. Old wood floor, not a speck of dust, a small table with 2 mismatched chairs, a little bookcase with a few children's books, spines worn from being read over and over, a small fridge, half open, almost empty, half a carton of milk, some wilted vegetables, a few eggs. On the stove, a pot of instant noodles gone cold, a lunch Lily probably made for herself with 5-year-old hands. But what stops Marco the longest are the walls, butterflies everywhere, from the living room to the narrow hallway. Drawn in crayon, every size, every color, purple, yellow, blue, pink, orange, taped everywhere, covering the cracks in the plaster, hiding the spreading water stains, turning a broken-down wall into something that almost looks like joy. Of 5-year-old used crayons to decorate her terrible world. That truth goes through Marco's chest like something sharper than any bullet. Sarah Holloway is lying on a worn-out sofa. Marco recognizes her, the quiet woman who used to pass like a shadow through his mansion. Always with her head down, always silent, always making herself invisible. 27 years old, but her pale, hollow face looks older than that. Her breathing is shallow and difficult. Her lips have no color. Marco checks her pulse, 2 fingers on her wrist. Weak, but still there. And in that moment, standing in an apartment smaller than the dressing room in his mansion, he does a calculation. Simple, brutal. Every crystal chandelier in his home costs as much as a full year of rent here. Every bottle of wine he opens at dinner could feed Sarah and her daughter for an entire month. This woman mopped the floors of his mansion, walked the velvet, carpeted halls, polished marble surfaces until they gleamed, then came back here where her daughter used crayons to hide the cracks. For the first time in his life, Marco Valen's wealth does not feel like victory. It feels like shame. Raphael steps in behind him. He checks the windows, the exits, the corners, out of habit. But there is nothing here, no drugs, no weapons, no sign of anything criminal at all. Just a very sick mother and a daughter far too brave for her age. Raphael looks at Marco, and for the first time in 15 years, he sees something completely new in those gray eyes. Not cold math, not controlled anger, pain, real pain, the pain of a man seeing the cost of his own indifference. The ambulance arrives, the ambulance siren rises from the street below. Marco breathes out in relief, but another question seizes him immediately. Where does Lily go while her mother is taken to the hospital? The question comes so naturally, it startles him. Since when does he think about the future of a child who has nothing to do with him? 2 paramedics arrive fast and focused. They assess Sarah, their faces say everything. Dangerously low blood pressure, severe dehydration. She needs to be admitted immediately. "Paramedic, sir, are you family?" Marco opens his mouth. He does not know what to call himself. He is not a husband. Not a brother, not a friend. He is the employer she was too afraid to ask for help. "Marco, I am the one responsible." Every word carries weight, like signing a contract with no way out. Paramedic and the child. Marco looks down. At some point, without him noticing, Lily had grabbed the leg of his pants, both tiny hands gripping the fabric. Like he is the only life ring in the ocean, she does not speak. She does not cry. She just looks up at him with green eyes, asking one question she does not need to say out loud. "Are you going to leave me here, Marco? She is coming with me." No hesitation, not even half a second. Raphael shakes his head slightly behind Marco's back, but he does not argue, because he can see it in Marco's eyes. This is not a logical decision. It is something deeper than logic. Something even a crime boss cannot resist when a child grabs his leg and believes he is the only person who can keep her safe. The mansion. It is dusk when the car pulls up to the Lake Forest mansion. The sky is deep purple and gold. The iron gates swing open slowly, and the house appears at the end of the stone-paved drive. Lily presses her face to the car window. Her green eyes go huge. Lily, sir, are you a king? Your house looks just like the castle in my book. Marco turns off the engine. Looks at the mansion through her eyes for the very first time. 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, an indoor pool. Long hallways where his footsteps echo like a lonely count every single night. He bought this place 5 years ago as a declaration of power. Through Lily's eyes, he can only see an empty castle no one ever truly called home. Marco, I am not a king. I am just a man with a house that is a little too big. Maggie is already at the front door. Raphael called ahead on the drive over, and Maggie, the Irish woman who has run this estate for 20 years, does not look surprised. She does not ask a single question. 20 years of serving the Valent family has taught her when questions are unnecessary. She looks at the little girl standing next to Marco, tiny in her faded butterfly t-shirt, worn sandals. Eyes full of both fear and wonder. Maggie, hello, sweetheart. What's your name? Lily, I'm Lily. I'm 5. Maggie, Lily, would you like a warm bath? Then we'll find you some clean clothes. Lily looks up at Marco, asking permission with her eyes. He nods, and she follows Maggie upstairs, hesitant. But willing, Marco stays in the entrance hall, listening to the sound of tiny footsteps on the oak stairs. A strange new sound in a house that has only ever known the heavy thud of leather shoes and silence. Maggie searched the whole house and found nothing for a child. This mansion had not welcomed one since Dylan left 8 years ago. In the end, she took one of Marco's old t-shirts, rolled the sleeves, tied it at the waist, and turned it into a nightgown. When Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, freshly washed curls still wet, nearly swallowed inside a big black shirt, Marco almost smiled. But the expression stopped when he realized he had no idea what to do next. He could run a criminal network that covered the entire Great Lakes region without breaking a sweat. He could negotiate million-dollar deals without a single tremor in his hands, but feeding dinner to a 5-year-old completely outside everything he knew how to do. Marco, Lily, what do you want to eat? Lily, mac and cheese. He opens the refrigerator, white wine, imported French cheeses, Wagyu beef, organic greens, not one thing a 5-year-old would want. He looks at all that expensive food and feels for the first time that it is completely useless. Maggie steps in, gently moves him aside with a familiar brush of her shoulder, the kind only she would dare, and within 15 minutes sets a steaming plate of mac and cheese in front of Lily. Lily eats hungrily, one spoonful at a time. Every few bites she looks up at Marco, then back down quickly, like she is afraid if she looks away too long he might disappear. Meanwhile, Marco's phone on the counter vibrates without stopping. Victor called twice. Tommy texted 3 times. 2 capos left voicemails. Canceling the meeting without warning had sent ripples through the whole organization. Everyone wanted to know what was happening to their boss. Marco looks at the phone, then looks at Lily, focused on each spoonful of mac and cheese, and he does something he has never done in his entire career. He turns the phone completely off, not silent, not do not disturb, off. Raphael, standing in the kitchen doorway, watches and quietly pulls out his own phone to start making calls, putting out the fires his boss just left behind. Bedtime after dinner, Maggie prepares a bedroom for Lily, the smallest guest room in the mansion, still 3 times the size of Lily's bedroom in that 3rd-floor apartment. Marco stands in the doorway while Maggie tucks her in, feeling unnecessary in a way he has never felt before. Lily lies in a bed much too large for her small body, curls spread across the white pillow, green eyes still wide open, staring up at the ceiling. Lily, Mr. M, if my mommy doesn't get better, do I have to go to an orphanage? Tommy in my class says kids without parents have to go to an orphanage. Is it cold there? Marco walks to the side of the bed. He sits on the edge of the mattress, and the hand that is used to signing million-dollar deals lifts awkwardly and strokes her curly hair. The gesture is clumsy, almost funny, but Lily closes her eyes and leans into his palm like a kitten finding warmth. Marco, no one is taking you anywhere, Lily. I promise. That is the third promise he has made today. More than the total number of promises he has offered in the last 10 years. Because Marco Vaillant does not make promises. He gives orders, he demands, he threatens. Promises require being responsible for someone else's feelings. And that is something he has been avoiding for a very long time. Lily, Mr. M is really good. Mommy says her boss is scary, but you're not scary at all. She falls asleep within minutes. Face finally relaxed after the most terrifying day of her 5-year-old life. Marco stays a little longer, watching her sleep, then walks toward the study, pours a glass of whiskey, lifts it to his lips, but does not drink. He just watches the light of the desk lamp shine through the amber liquid, watches his own blurred face in it, and wonders whose face it really is. A soft knock. Raphael steps in, sits down without waiting to be invited. The privilege of 15 years of loyalty. Raphael, what are you going to do with the kid? Marco, I don't know yet, but I'm not turning my back. Raphael is quiet for a moment. Then his voice goes softer than usual, almost a whisper. Raphael, Dylan used to look at you with eyes like that. The room goes completely silent. Marco does not answer. The whiskey glass goes still in his hand, but Raphael can see his jaw tighten. And he knows those words landed harder than anything else ever could. Dylan, his own son, the child he let walk away 8 years ago when his ex-wife took him and Marco did not chase after them. Because at the time he believed the empire mattered more. Marco sets the glass down on the desk without a single sip. Stands up, walks out of the study in silence. Raphael watches his back disappear through the door. And for the first time, he does not know where Marco Vaillant is going. The hospital. The truth, the next morning, Marco drives to Northwestern Memorial Hospital before the sun has even climbed high. He has not slept, not because of the whiskey and not because of what Raphael said about Dylan, but because of tiny footsteps at 3 in the morning. Lily wandering into the hallway, scared of the dark in an unfamiliar room. He sat with her on the hallway floor until she fell asleep on his lap. He woke up with an aching back and a strangely clear mind. He needs to know exactly what is happening to Sarah Holloway. The doctor assigned to her case is Dr. Philip Hartwell, 65 years old, silver hair. Careful eyes that study Marco when he hears the name Vaillant. But he agrees to talk because Marco has already signed all the financial paperwork. They sit in a consultation room with the door closed. Doctor? Hartwell, Mr. Vaillant, Miss Holloway's condition is very serious. Stage 4 chronic kidney disease close to end stage. Her kidney function is down to about 15%. She needs regular dialysis, and eventually she will need a transplant if she wants to live. Marco sits still, waiting. But what comes next hits him like a fist to the chest. Doctor? Hartwell, what is important to understand, Miss Holloway has known about this for 6 months. She was diagnosed at a free clinic on the south side. The doctor there told her to start treatment. Immediately, she never came back, not once. Marco, why, doctor? Hartwell, she has no health insurance. She has a small daughter. She is a single mother with no family support. My guess is she was afraid that if she stopped working to get treatment, she would not have money to feed her child. The doctor pauses. Doctor. Hartwell, those 3 days she was absent, Mr. Vaillant, were not because she was irresponsible. Her body simply could not take it anymore. She collapsed from acute kidney failure, severe dehydration, and malnutrition. To put it plainly, she has been dying slowly for months. Marco stands, steps out into the hallway. He needs space, needs air, even hospital air. He leans his back against the white wall, closes his eyes, and lets the weight of the truth settle on him. He almost fired her. He picked up that phone with one intention, to cut off the last income of a woman who was failing, a mother who chose to die slowly rather than risk losing the only job that kept her daughter alive. And she was afraid, not afraid of sickness, not afraid of death, afraid of him. Afraid that if she admitted weakness, he would throw her away like a broken thing. Marco opens his eyes, looks down the hospital hallway, nurses moving in and out, patients in wheelchairs, families waiting outside rooms. He wonders what kind of empire he built, if a woman would rather die than open her mouth and ask for sick leave. And then something bigger hits him. It is not just Sarah. In his whole organization, built on iron discipline and zero tolerance, people hid weakness too. Nobody dared admit they were sick or scared or exhausted, because they feared being pushed aside, replaced. Thrown away, his empire was no different from a prison if everyone inside it and outside it lived in fear. Marco goes back to Sarah's room, sits in the chair beside the bed, waits. 10 minutes later, Sarah's eyes flutter open. She turns her head and sees him. The reaction is immediate. Her eyes fly wide with terror. Her whole body goes stiff. The monitor spikes with frantic beeping as her heart rate jumps. She tries to push herself up, too weak, lifts a hand to protect herself. Her lips trembling. Sarah, Mr. Valent, please. I am sorry. Please don't Lily, my daughter. She thinks he came to punish her. Marco sees it in an instant, and shame floods him harder than the worst anger he has ever known. A woman waking from the edge of death, and her first response to seeing her employer is not relief. It is fear. Marco, Sarah. He uses the gentlest voice he can find inside himself, the same one he used last night with Lily when she was scared of the dark. A voice he did not know he had until 24 hours ago. Marco, Lily is at my house. She is safe. She is being fed. She is being taken care of. You do not have to worry about her. You just have to focus on getting better. Sarah stares at him. Fear still in her eyes, but something else starts to flicker. Confusion. Disbelief she does not dare trust. Sarah, why are you doing this, Marco? Why didn't you tell anyone you were sick? Sarah turns her face away. Tears slide silently into her pillow. A long silence. Sarah, because I was afraid I'd lose my job. If I lose my job, Lily won't have anything to eat. I can handle pain. I can handle being tired, but I cannot watch my daughter go hungry. Marco sits completely still. The answer is brutal in its simplicity. There is nothing more to explain. Nothing to analyze. A mother choosing to die slowly so her child could eat. And he, the man at the top of the empire, was the reason she was afraid enough to make that choice. In his career, Marco had faced the harshest judgments the legal system could deliver. But no indictment weighs as heavily as that one sentence from a 27-year-old woman crying on a hospital bed. Marco steps into the hallway, pulls out his phone. Marco, Harold, I need her enrolled in the best health insurance available. Move her to a private room. Find the top kidney specialists in the country, no matter the cost. A pause on the other end. Harold, Marco, she's your cleaning employee, are you sure? Marco, no matter the cost, Harold. Am I clear? He ends the call. Stands alone in the hospital hallway, back against the wall, eyes closing. Inside the room, Sarah's heart monitor returns to its steady rhythm. Beep, 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 like a countdown, reminding him that there are some things money and power cannot buy back once they are gone. The first week, sweet chaos, the first week Lily stayed at the Lake Forest mansion, turned Marco Valent's perfectly arranged life into a sweet, unplanned chaos he was not even a little bit ready for. On the first morning, he tried to make breakfast himself because Maggie had not arrived yet. 3 eggs, burned completely black, stuck to an expensive non-stick pan in a way his private chef had never managed to misuse in 4 years. Smoke rolled through the kitchen. The fire alarm screamed. Tony burst in thinking something serious had happened, only to find his boss waving smoke away with a silk napkin. While Lily sat on her high chair, both hands over her mouth, giggling. Lily, Mr. M, the eggs are black. Marco, I know. These are special eggs. Char-grilled eggs. Lily, that's not a real thing, Mr. M. Marco, then you're happy. Mission accomplished. Lily finished every single bite of those burned eggs without complaining once. And Marco had to turn his face away, so she would not see his eyes sting. Not from the smoke. On the third day, Marco bought toys. He sent Tony to the biggest toy store in Chicago and told him to bring back everything a child could possibly want. The problem was, Marco had no idea what a 5-year-old actually wanted. Tony came back with an educational tablet meant for 10-year-olds, a teddy bear as big as Lily, a 500-piece puzzle, and a remote control car, which Tony admitted with a sheepish honesty. He had bought more for himself than for the girl. Lily looked at the pile of toys stacked higher than her head, then looked up at Marco. Lily, Mr. M, I only need crayons. I like drawing. On the fourth day, Maggie bought a box of 48 crayons. And from that moment, the Lake Forest mansion entered a completely new era. Lily drew butterflies everywhere. On paper, on coloring books, and then one afternoon, on the pristine white wall of the main living room. The wall, the interior design team had charged nearly $20,000 to repaint with special imported paint. Maggie found it first and nearly fainted. Tony stood behind her, shaking his head over and over. But when Marco walked in and saw the purple butterfly, as large as a pillow, stretched across that expensive wall, he just stared at it in silence. Lily stood beside him, crayon still in her hand, eyes down, lower lip trembling, clearly waiting to be scolded. Marco, draw more. That wall is ugly. It needs more butterflies. Lily's face lit up like he had handed her the whole world. And from that day on, one section of the living room wall became the Lily Art Museum, covered in butterflies of every color, right next to contemporary paintings worth tens of thousands of dollars that no one looked at anymore. At night, when Lily was scared of the dark and could not sleep, Marco sat beside her bed and told her fairy tales. The problem was, he did not know a single complete one. Marco, once upon a time there was a fish. The fish lived in the ocean and it swam. It swam really well. The end. Lily laughed so hard she rolled on the bed. Lily, Mr. M, you tell the worst stories in the whole world. Marco, I know, but you're laughing, aren't you? Lily, I'm laughing because it's bad, not because it's good. Marco, then you're happy. Mission accomplished. The mansion changed day by day in quiet but unmistakable ways. Tiny sandals appeared next to Italian leather shoes at the entrance. Crayons rolled across the walnut table where Marco had once signed $1,000,000 contracts. Laughter echoed through hallways that had only ever known heavy silence. And Maggie, who had lived in this house for 20 years, told Raphael one morning, Maggie, this is the first time I have ever heard this house breathe. The tale danger arrives on the 5th day. Marco took Lily to the hospital to visit Sarah. Lily held a fresh butterfly, drawing in her arms, ready to give her mother. They had barely been on the main road a few minutes when Raphael checked the rear view mirror. Raphael, black SUV behind us, picked up after the last intersection, just far enough to look casual, not far enough to fool me. Marco did not turn around. He checked his own mirror, confirmed it, then looked at Lily beside him, explaining to her teddy bear why they were going to the doctor. Marco, change the route. We are not going to the hospital. Home first. Raphael made 3 quick turns onto side streets. The SUV disappeared after the second turn, but both men knew it had not really disappeared. Back at the mansion, while Maggie brought Lily inside, Raphael ran the license plate. The answer came back in 15 minutes. Raphael, vehicle registered to a shell company, traces back to Victor's people. Marco stood at the living room window, watching Lily in the yard, chasing a dry leaf spinning in the autumn wind, giggling, completely unaware she had just been followed. And in that moment, a cold realization cuts through him. Sharp as any blade, his world, the empire he built, the power he held, none of it was a shield protecting Lily. It was a threat. His very existence in the underworld was putting her in danger. The power he had once been proud of had become the thing that could hurt the child he promised to protect. Later that afternoon, with 2 escort vehicles instead of going alone, they made it to the hospital. Lily launched herself onto her mother's bed, careful not to touch the Roman 4-line, just like Maggie had warned. And she started talking without stopping. Lily, Mommy, Mr. M's house is huge. It's as big as our whole neighborhood. There's a big garden, Mommy, and trees taller than our building. And I got to draw on the wall. He let me. He said the wall was ugly and needed more butterflies. And Mr. M cooked eggs, and they were burned black, but I ate them all. And he told me a fairy tale, and it was really bad. It was just a fish, and it swam, and then it ended. Sarah lay there smiling at every sentence her daughter poured out, her eyes brightening with each detail. But when Lily turned away to grab a cup of water from the table, Sarah turned her face toward the wall. And silent tears overflowed. She was happy, truly happy, because her daughter was being cared for, laughing. Allowed to be a carefree child, the way she should have been from the beginning, but at the same time, a heartbreak that tears through her. Because she, the mother, could not give her child those things. All she had been able to offer was a damp apartment, instant noodles, and old crayons to draw butterflies over cracks in the wall. Marco stood outside the hospital room, watching through the small window, seeing Lily laugh and Sarah cry at the same time. His chest ached in a way he had no words for. He only knew from now on he was not just protecting a child. He was carrying the weight of an entire family he had almost destroyed with a single phone call. The meeting facing the organization 2 weeks after Lily walked into the Lake Forest mansion. Marco could not delay it anymore. The organization needed him. Or more precisely, the organization needed to know he was still the one in charge. The capos were summoned to the basement of an Italian restaurant on Grand Avenue, a place that looked like a family dining spot from the outside. But beneath it, a soundproof meeting room built for conversations no one outside was allowed to hear. Marco walked in and felt the change in the air immediately. Normally when he appeared, everyone stood. Fast, sharp, like a reflex drilled into them over years. Today, the rising was slower by half a beat. Only half a beat, but to a man who lived by reading people, that half beat was as loud as a declaration. 6 capos around the long wooden table. Tommy on the left, loyal but easily swayed when the wind changed. The Bianca brothers in the middle, always backing whoever looked stronger. And at the far end, directly across from Marco's seat, sat Victor Costa. 55 years old, silver hair slicked back, a fox who had survived 3 generations of Valent leadership. He had never fully hidden his contempt for a boss he considered too young and too impulsive, and now too soft. Marco sat down, buttoned his vest slowly, and waited, because the one who holds power does not need to speak first. He waits and lets the impatient reveal themselves. Victor did not wait long. Victor, 2 weeks you disappeared, no meetings, no direction. Raphael had to scramble and handle everything while you were busy doing whatever it is you were doing. He leans back, eyes narrow. Victor, or actually I know, the whole organization knows. You are raising the cleaning woman's little girl in your mansion, skipping meetings for the kid, canceling deals for the kid, taking her to the hospital with escort cars like she is royalty. You are turning this organization into a daycare. Dead silence in the room. Not a chair creaked, not a throat cleared. 6 pairs of eyes locked on Marco, waiting. Victor, we follow a boss, a leader, not a babysitter. The Valent family has survived 40 years because the men at the top knew to put the organization first. Your father understood that. Your grandfather understood that. My question is, do you still understand it? Victor places both hands on the table, palms down. In the silent language of the underworld, that means, I am putting the issue on the table, and I want an answer. Marco sat through all of it without a single interruption. No frown, no shift in posture, his face calm as a winter lake. And that calm was what made some of the capos start to feel uneasy. Because the ones who had been around long enough all knew. Marco Valent was most dangerous, not when he was angry, but when he was quiet. Marco stood up slowly, smooth, unhurried, like he had all day and the whole world was waiting on him. He buttoned his vest again and walked the length of the table, each step measured. Each time he passed a man, That man's head dipped slightly. Almost by reflex, Marco stopped directly in front of Victor, close enough that Victor had to tilt his chin up to look at him. Close enough that Victor could see Marco's gray eyes held no anger, and that was more frightening than any rage. Marco, Victor, so soft, so quiet, the men at the far end had to hold their breath to hear it. Marco, I am still the man who kept this organization from collapsing when men far better than you tried to drag it down. I am still the man you should think very carefully before challenging in front of everyone, but if you are confusing mercy with weakness, then you never understood what power is. And if you still do not understand what power is after 40 years in this life, then maybe you should ask yourself who is sitting in the wrong seat in this room. Silence. A silence long enough to count heartbeats. Victor Costa, who had just spoken to the whole room with confident, open defiance, swallowed, so visibly that his throat bobbed, and everyone saw it. He did not answer, not because he had nothing to say, but because Marco's gray eyes looked down at him with a coldness Victor understood better than anyone. The look of a man who was not threatening, but deciding. Marco turned his back, walked toward the door, and did not say another word. The meeting was over, not with a declaration, not with an order, but with the silent departure of the man in power. Something heavier than any speech. Outside in the car, Raphael slid into the driver's seat and did not start the engine right away. Raphael, Victor is not just talking, Marco. That SUV that tailed you, his people. And I have word he has been testing Tommy and the Bianca brothers. He is building an alliance. Marco looked out the window at the stream of people on the street. Ordinary people, ordinary lives, lives he had never had. Hearing that a capo was building a challenge would have triggered one thing from him immediately. Decisive, clean, no trace, but today, the first thought that rose was not how to deal with Victor. It was what would happen to Lily if he stepped into an internal war. A 5-year-old girl sitting at home drawing butterflies on walls and waiting for him to come back for dinner. A child who called him Mr. M and believed he would keep his promises. For the first time in his career, Marco Valent made a decision by asking not what was best for the Empire, but what was best for the child waiting for him at home. Marco, take us home, Raphael. I will handle Victor, but not today. The legal threat heralded Marco's lawyer, called at 7 in the morning 3 days later. His voice carried a strain Marco rarely heard from a man who had handled every legal problem for the Valent family for 20 years. Harold, Marco, we have a problem. Child Protective Services has opened a case on Lily Holloway. Her mother is hospitalized long-term. There is no relative appointed as guardian, and they want to place the child into the foster care system. Marco was sitting at the kitchen table, one hand on the phone. The other wiping up the orange juice Lily had just spilled across the surface. She sat across from him, carefully drawing a new butterfly on a sheet of paper. Completely unaware her world was about to be threatened again. Marco, no, she is with me. She is safe. She is being cared for. They have no reason to take her. Harold, that is exactly the problem. You are not family. There is no blood relation. And you are you, Marco. Your FBI file is as thick as a dictionary. You have never been convicted, yes, but you have been on their watch list for 10 years. Any judge is going to think twice before handing a 5-year-old child to someone the FBI considers a suspected organized crime figure. Marco tightened his grip on the phone. Harold, and there is more. Someone sent an anonymous letter to the Child Services Office with copies of your FBI file attached, pointing out that you are a suspected organized crime figure, currently keeping a child in your home without legal guardianship papers. Marco did not need it traced. He knew exactly who was behind it. Victor could not bring him down in the meeting room, so he chose to strike from the outside, using the legal system as a weapon, using a 5-year-old child as the sharp end of the attack. And what made Marco furious was not that Victor was targeting him. It was that Victor was willing to drag Lily into the war. The social worker visits 4 days later. A child services social worker arrived at the Lake Forest mansion. Her name was Janet Morrison, around 45, hair cut short and neat, square, framed glasses, a file folder clutched to her chest like a shield. Her gaze swept over the estate with undisguised suspicion, from the iron gate to the maple trees lining the drive, from the car in the garage to the oak front door taller than a man. Everything here radiated wealth, and in her experience, wealth paired with the name Valent never meant safety. Janet, Mr. Valent, I need to inspect the child's living conditions and speak with her privately. I trust you understand the procedure. Marco, make yourself comfortable. His voice is the calmest he can hold, even though inside him is a fear completely different from anything he has ever faced. Against an enemy in the underworld, he knows the rules. He knows how to win. But against a social worker who can take Lily away with a signature on a form, he is completely powerless. Janet walked through the mansion, taking notes. She saw Lily's bedroom, made warm by Maggie with a new bed, soft pillows, and a butterfly nightlight Marco had ordered the first night after learning the child was scared of the dark. She saw the living room wall covered in crayon butterflies. She saw the tiny sandals next to the Italian leather shoes at the entrance. The box of crayons on the kitchen table, the fridge now stocked with milk, fruit, cheese, everything a child needed. She wrote in her notebook, her face completely unreadable. Marco could not tell what she was thinking. Then she asked to speak with Lily alone. Marco stepped into the hallway, leaned his back against the wall. Heart pounding harder than he could remember, Raphael stood beside him, silent. Maggie waited at the end of the hall, both hands clasped tight at her chest. 3 adults, all of them waiting for a verdict from a 5-year-old. Inside the room, Janet sat beside Lily, her voice gentle. Janet, Lily, can you tell me about your life here? Are you happy? Lily looked at her with clear green eyes, and answered with the absolute honesty that only children carry. Lily, I want to stay with Mr. M. He tells really bad fairy tales. It's just a fish and it swims and then it ends. He cooks eggs and burns them black. He buys toys for me, but he always buys the wrong ones. Lily pauses, tilts her head slightly, like she is thinking. Lily, but he is always there when I am scared. Every single time I am scared of the dark, he sits with me until I fall asleep. Every time I miss my mommy, he takes me to see her. He promised no one would take me away, and he kept his promise. I want to stay here until my mommy gets better. Janet Morrison wrote something in her notebook, and when she stepped back out, Marco saw her eyes had changed. They were not cold anymore. They carried something that looked almost like confusion, as if what she had found here did not match a single thing in the file she had read before she came. The guardianship papers the following week. Marco's lawyer took him to the hospital so Sarah could sign the temporary guardianship papers. Sarah sat up in her hospital bed, still weak, but far more alert than the first time Marco had seen her. When Harold placed the document in front of her and explained what it meant, Sarah's hand trembled as she held the pen. She looked up at Marco. Her eyes were wet, but no longer filled with fear. Instead, something Marco needed a moment to recognize. Trust. Sarah, Mr. Valent, I do not understand why you are doing all of this. I am just the woman who mops your floors. But my daughter is laughing more than she ever has. That is all I need to know. She signed her name, the letters shaky but clear. And when the pen lifted from the page, Marco felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Heavier than any deal he had ever signed, and yet warmer than any victory he had ever won. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Marco called Raphael into the study. He sat behind his desk, went straight to the point. Marco, I am turning over the entire illegal side to you. I am going to focus on Valent Capital, the clean business. It is the only way the court will not have a reason to deny the guardianship petition, and it is the only way Victor cannot use my past as a weapon. Raphael stared at him for a long moment. Raphael, you are changing an entire empire because of a 5-year-old. Marco looked out the study window where moonlight lay across the garden where Lily chased leaves during the day. Marco, no, I am changing because for the first time in my life, I have a reason to become a better man. Victor's last move. Victor did not wait long. Only 5 days after Sarah signed the guardianship papers, Raphael got a call from a man he had placed inside Victor's circle more than 2 years earlier. A quiet piece on the board, never moved until now. The information was clear. Victor was calling a closed meeting for Saturday night at an abandoned warehouse on the west side, inviting Tommy, the Bianco brothers, and 2 capos from the Northern Territory. One subject on the agenda: a change in leadership. Raphael drove to the mansion that very afternoon. He walked into the study where Marco sat reading a children's book, one Maggie had suggested so he could learn to tell Lily better bedtime stories. Seeing that book in the hands of a crime boss, Raphael almost forgot why he had come. Raphael, Victor's meeting, Saturday night, old warehouse on the west side, 6 men. He is going to propose a no-confidence vote. Marco set the book down. The page still open to a story about a caterpillar learning to fly. He was quiet, one finger tapping the cover. A steady rhythm Raphael recognized as thinking, not hesitation. Marco, how many of the men in that room are truly with Victor? Raphael, Tommy is wavering. The Bianca brothers are waiting to see which way the wind blows. The other 2, not sure. But if Victor sells it well enough and you do not show up, they could lean his way. Marco, how many men do you want me to bring? Your call. 6, 8, 10. I can arrange it within hours. Marco, no one. Raphael stared at him like he had just heard the worst joke in history. Raphael, alone, into a room with 6 men discussing how to remove you, with no one, no. Marco, no guns, nothing, except the brown leather portfolio in the 3rd drawer of my desk, the one I have kept for 3 years and never opened. Raphael went silent, then nodded slowly, because he knew exactly what was in that portfolio. And he understood Marco was not going alone out of recklessness. He was going alone because it was the purest display of power, walking into the den of wolves without any armor at all. Saturday night, the West Side warehouse, a wide empty space, pale yellow industrial lights overhead. A long wooden table in the middle of the room, 6 men seated around it, Victor at the head of the table, the seat only Marco had the right to claim. The audacity of that choice was a declaration without words. Victor was in the middle of speaking, smooth, confident, rehearsed. Victor, the Valent family needs a leader focused on the organization, not a man busy raising someone else's kid and playing house. I propose. The steel door opened. Every head turned, the room froze. Marco Valent walked in alone. No bodyguards, no Raphael, hands empty except for a brown leather portfolio. Black suit, white shirt, no tie, gray eyes sweeping the room in one slow pass, counting faces, memorizing expressions. Tommy went pale. The Bianca brothers uncrossed their arms at almost the same moment. The 2 capos at the far end stood by reflex, then sat back down, not sure if they should be standing or sitting. Only Victor stayed seated, but his eyes blinked faster than usual, and his index finger tapped the tabletop in a rhythm he could not control. Marco pulled out the empty chair at the opposite end, sat down, set the portfolio on the wood, said nothing. 30 seconds of silence in a room full of dangerous men. 30 seconds of silence felt like 30 years. Marco, I heard there was a meeting I was not invited to, so I invited myself. He looks at each man. One by one, slowly, then stops on Victor. Marco, you want my seat, take it. I do not keep anyone here through fear. He spreads his hands, palms up. Open, certain. Marco, but before you take it, ask yourselves one simple question. Who in this room can keep everything from collapsing within a week? Who knows the passwords to 17 accounts holding the organization's money? Who has the port connections so shipments do not get stopped? Who is keeping 3 districts from erupting into a territory war? Who? Silence. Nobody answered. Nobody met anybody's eyes. Tommy stared hard at the tabletop. The Bianco brothers looked at each other, then away. The naked truth sat in the middle of the room like a slab of concrete nobody wanted to lift. Marco nodded slowly, as if that silence was the only answer he needed. Then he opened the portfolio. Inside, a thick stack of documents. Red tabs, neatly arranged. He slid it toward the center of the table. Marco, this is a detailed record of every dollar Victor has withdrawn from the organization's common fund over the past 3 years. Total amounts, dates, destination accounts, all of it. I have known since the first year, but I never used it because I believed in loyalty more than punishment. Victor's face went from red to white in 2 seconds. As if someone drained the blood straight out of him, he stared at the papers, then at the other capos as their expressions shifted from confusion to understanding. And he knew the game was over before it ever began. Marco, Victor, 2 choices. 1, retire quietly in Florida. Beach house, warm weather, peaceful old age. Nobody ever speaks of this again. 2, everyone in this room and outside this room learns exactly how much you stole from their pockets. Victor Costa, who had survived 3 generations of leadership, looked at Marco with the eyes of a man who had lost. He did not rage, he did not plead innocent. He stood up, shoved his chair back, said 1 word, Victor, Florida, and he walked out. Nobody stopped him, nobody said goodbye. The steel door slammed shut behind him. The echo rang through the wide empty warehouse. Marco, anyone have something they want to say? 5 heads lowered at almost the same time. Tommy, nothing, Mr. Valent. Marco nodded, stood, picked up the portfolio, and walked out the same way he walked in, alone. He drove back to the mansion through the quiet night. Chicago streets empty, street lights sliding across the windshield like lazy orange streaks. The mansion was dark and still when he stepped inside. Maggie in her room, Tony in the carriage house. Marco took off his shoes, walked in his socks across the wooden floor. Went upstairs to Lily's room. She lay curled in the middle of the big bed, hugging the giant teddy bear Tony had bought. Curls spread across the pillow, face utterly peaceful in sleep. The butterfly nightlight cast a soft yellow glow on the ceiling, sending faint butterfly shapes turning slowly overhead. Marco sat on the edge of the bed, gently. He had just resolved the biggest crisis of his 36 years without violence, without threats, without anything except calm and a portfolio. And sitting in the soft yellow light of the butterfly lamp, looking at the sleeping face of a 5-year-old child, he understood something. That calm did not come from experience. It did not come from toughness. It came from Lily, from the evenings sitting beside her bed telling the story of the fish that swam, from the mornings wiping up burned eggs while she laughed, from a child who taught him something without ever knowing she was teaching. That real strength is not making people afraid. It is making someone feel safe. The dull, one quiet afternoon, when the mansion had finally settled back into peace after days of chaos, Marco passed Lily's room and stopped. She was sitting on the rug, surrounded by dolls and teddy bears, lost inside a game only she could see. She cradled a blonde-haired doll in her lap, stroked its hair gently, and spoke in the sweetest voice. "Lily, good girl, Mommy's here. Mommy isn't going anywhere. Don't be scared." She laid the doll on a small pillow, tucked a scrap of fabric over it like a blanket, bent down and kissed its forehead. "Lily, go to sleep, baby. Mommy promises I will still be here when you open your eyes in the morning." Marco stood in the doorway. His face went dark like someone pulled a black curtain down over it. He watched her care for that doll with the tenderness she had learned from Sarah, with promises she had heard him say every night, and something deep in his chest twisted into pain, because in that scene, he saw the shadow of another child, a 6-year-old boy 8 years ago, standing in a doorway with gray eyes just like his, asking, "Young Dylan, where are you going, Dad?" while his mother carried a suitcase down the stairs. And Marco did not run after them. "Lily, Mr. M, are you sad?" Lily lifted her head to look at him, her green eyes sharp with that instinct children have and adults lose. She did not ask what was wrong. She went straight to the center, because children do not know how to go around the truth. Marco stepped into the room, sat down on the rug beside her, back against the bed frame. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly, like every word had to push through a thick wall inside him before it could come out. "Marco, I am sad because I miss another child, a boy I should have loved the right way, but I did not. Lily, where is he? Marco, far away in Boston. Lily, how old is he? Marco, 14. Lily, why don't you see him? Marco, because I let him go and I did not chase him. Then the days kept passing and I thought it was too late. Lily studied him, her face strangely serious for her age. Then she said, in the simplest voice in the world, as if the answer was so obvious she could not understand why grown-ups did not see it. Lily, then call him. I called you. So you can call it too. Marco looked at her, and that sentence cut through him sharper than any accusation, deeper than any threat, because it came from the pure honesty of a 5-year-old using the only experience she had to solve someone else's pain. I called you, so you can call him too. Yes, a 5-year-old child in terror, beside an unconscious mother, had been brave enough to pick up the phone and reach a stranger. And Marco Valent, the man an entire city feared, had been too afraid to call his own son for 8 years. The call to Dylan that afternoon, after Lily went downstairs for a snack with Maggie. Marco sat alone in the study, the phone on the desk in front of him. He stared at it the way a man stares at a bomb. His finger scrolled through contacts and stopped on the name he had not touched in 8 years, Dylan Valent. He pressed call. His heart hit harder than it ever had facing any enemy. Harder even than the night he walked into that warehouse alone. First ring, second ring, third ring. He almost wanted it to go to voicemail. At least then he could say he tried, but the fourth ring was cut off. Dylan, hello. A teenage voice, deeper than Marco had imagined. 8 years can turn a child's voice into the voice of someone almost grown. And that truth tightened his throat. Marco, hello Dylan, it's Dad. Silence, long and heavy enough that Marco could hear the clock on the study wall counting every second. Dylan, 8 years, Dad. 8 years, Marco, I know. Dylan, 8 years, no call, no birthdays, no Christmas, no elementary school graduation. I waited. Every year I waited, then I stopped waiting. Marco closed his eyes. Each sentence from Dylan, a precise blade into wounds Marco made himself and pretended were not there. Marco, I do not have an excuse, Dylan. I was wrong. I chose the wrong things, and I lost the thing that mattered most. Dylan, so why are you calling now? Marco opened his eyes, looked past the study door where he could see Lily in the distant kitchen, feet swinging on the high chair, mouth full of cookies, telling Maggie something with excited, bright words. Marco, because a 5-year-old girl taught me that it is never too late to pick up the phone. Silence again. But this time, different. Not the silence of anger, the silence of someone weighing something, struggling between 8 years of hurt and a thin thread of hope he did not want to admit he still had. Dylan, I am not promising anything, but I will think about it. Marco, that is enough. Thank you, Dylan. He ended the call, set the phone down on the desk. His hands trembled slightly, and his eyes were burning. He sat there for a while in the quiet study, listening to Lily's distant laughter from the kitchen, and let the feeling move through him without trying to stop it. For the first time in his life, he did not fight it. Small footsteps on the floor. Lily came running into the study. Cookie crumbs still on her mouth, arms wrapping around his leg. Lily, Mr. M, did you call him? Was he happy? Marco, he needs time, but he listened. Lily, he is going to like me. She declared this with the fierce certainty of a child who had never learned doubt. Lily, everybody likes me. Marco almost laughed through the ache in his chest. He bent down and stroked her hair, and Lily looked up at him with clear green eyes. Daddy E that night, Marco sat beside Lily's bed the way he always did, ready to tell the improved version of the fish story, the one he had been practicing all week with the book Maggie lent him. But before he could begin, Lily lay on her pillow, eyes on him, and whispered, Lily, Mr. M, can I ask you something? Marco, yes, you can ask me anything. Lily, can I call you Dad? Marco stopped breathing, his chest held still for one beat, then two, as if his heart needed to pause to take in the weight of that question. A question he did not deserve to hear after the way he had failed his own son, and yet a question he had wanted more than anything in the world. Marco, yes, if you want to. Lily smiled. a small smile that lit the room brighter than the butterfly lamp on the ceiling. She closed her eyes, curled under the blanket, and whispered the last 2 words before sleep took her. Lily, Daddy M. The transplant 3 weeks after the night, Lily called him Daddy M for the first time. The 2 most important events arrived almost at the same moment, as if fate had placed them side by side on purpose, to test Marco Valent's heart to its very last limit. Sarah's kidney transplant was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Marco had used every legitimate connection he had, and he had many to find a compatible donor in the shortest possible time. The total cost of the surgery and the treatment afterward was a number his lawyer frowned at. Marco never looked at the bill. Not once. That morning, Marco and Lily sat in the surgical waiting area at the hospital. Pale blue chairs, white lights, the faint smell of antiseptic making every feeling sharper. Lily sat beside Marco, both hands clutching his right hand. She did not say a word through the first hour, which was unusual for a child who normally talked without stopping. And that silence spoke her fear louder than any sentence could. Every few minutes, Lily squeezed his hand tighter. Marco squeezed back, a wordless conversation between them, where the only shared language was presence. Raphael sat a row behind them, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold long ago without taking a single sip. Maggie was at home, preparing a room for Sarah's discharge, because everyone chose to believe the surgery would succeed. Even though nobody dared say it out loud, 2 hours passed, then 3. Lily began bouncing her leg, a habit when she was anxious. Marco placed his other hand on her knee to steady it, a small gesture he had not even known he was capable of a few weeks earlier. Lily, Daddy M, does mommy hurt? Marco, your mommy is sleeping. When you are sleeping, you do not hurt. Lily, do you promise? Marco, I promise. In the 4th hour, the operating room doors opened. Dr. Hartwell stepped out, still in surgical scrubs. Mask pulled down under his chin, Marco read his face with the lifelong skill of reading men. The lines on the doctor's forehead had eased. His eyes did not dodge, his shoulders had dropped. Before the doctor could speak, Marco already knew. Dr. Hartwell, the surgery was successful. Miss Holloway's body is accepting the new kidney. We will monitor closely for the next 48 hours, but all the indicators are very positive. Lily looked up at Marco, her green eyes wide, as if she needed him to confirm she had heard correctly. Marco nodded, and the smile he gave her in that moment was the most real smile his face had made in 36 years. Lily sprang off the chair and flung herself into Marco's arms with all the strength of her small body. Both arms locked tight around his neck, and she shouted in a voice that rang through the whole waiting room, making every patient and every family turn to look. Lily, Mom is going to get better. Daddy M, Mom is going to get better. Daddy M, Mom is going to get better. It was the first time she called him Daddy M in front of anyone else. Not a whisper in the darkness of a bedroom, a shout in a crowded hospital waiting room, with no shame, no hesitation, with the pure pride of a child naming the person she trusts most in the world. Marco held her, one hand on her back, one hand cradling her head, and he felt his eyes burn. Raphael stood behind them, turned his face away, pretended to drink the cold coffee. The courtroom a week later, the official guardianship hearing took place at Cook County Family Court. The courtroom was smaller than Marco expected, not glamorous like in the movies, just wooden tables, hard chairs, natural light coming through tall windows. Judge Margaret Chen, around 60, silver hair pinned into a neat bun, round glasses, sat on the bench, with the expression of someone who had heard too many sad stories and was not easily moved by anything. She read the file slowly, turning each page one by one. Marco knew what she was reading, his background. The FBI material, the Child Services report, the positive report from the social worker, Sarah's authorization, the guardianship petition. Judge Chen, Mr. Valent, you have a complicated history, to put it mildly. The court has reviewed this carefully. My question is simple. Why should this court believe you are a suitable person to... care for a 5-year-old child. Harold sat beside Marco, ready with a long-prepared argument full of numbers and legal precedents. But Marco placed a hand on his lawyer's arm. "I will answer this myself." He stood up, buttoned his vest out of habit, and looked straight into the judge's eyes. "Marco, Your Honor, I am not a perfect man. I have lived my whole life believing power was everything. I built everything around me on discipline and control, and in the process I lost what mattered most, including my own son." He paused. The courtroom was completely silent. "Marco, but a 5-year-old girl taught me something I did not learn in 36 years of living. She taught me that the only thing with real value in this life is not money, and it is not power, and it is not the fear of other people. It is being called Dad." Judge Chen stared at him without blinking, then looked down at the file, then up again. "Judge Chen, the court notes your statement. Are there other witnesses?" Harold rose, prepared to speak. But before he could, the courtroom door opened. Raphael walked in, wearing a suit Marco had never seen him wear. Hair neatly combed, clean shaven, the face of a man doing the hardest thing he has ever done. He stepped up to the witness stand. Harold introduced him. "Judge Chen, Mr. Briggs, can you tell the court what you have observed?" Raphael swallowed. He was a man who could face danger without shaking, but standing before a judge in a courtroom, talking about feelings, was completely foreign territory. "Raphael, I have worked with Mr. Valent for 15 years. I know who he is. I know who he used to be, and I have never seen anyone change that much that fast." He glanced at Marco, then back to the judge. "Raphael, he is not perfect. He burns eggs. He tells the worst fairy tales I have ever heard. He buys toys that are completely wrong for her age, but he sits by that child's bed every single night until she falls asleep. He turns off his phone in the middle of the most important calls of his life to sit and eat dinner with her. He is changing his entire life for her." Raphael paused. And when he said the last sentence, his voice trembled, slightly, something Marco had never seen in 15 years. "Raphael, he is the best father that little girl could have. I would bet my life on it." The courtroom was silent. Judge Chen looked at Raphael for a long moment, then at the file, then at Marco, then toward Lily, sitting with Maggie in the back row, legs swinging, a doll in her arms, green eyes lifted up to the judge without a trace of fear. The judge struck her gavel. "Judge Chen, the court grants the petition for legal guardianship. Lily Holloway shall from this day forward bear the name Lily Valent, and she shall be placed under the lawful guardianship of Mr. Marco Valent." Lily did not understand the full legal meaning of those words, but she understood the sound of the gavel. She understood Maggie's smile. She understood Daddy M's wet, red eyes, and she understood that from now on, everything would be different. She ran down the aisle of the courtroom with the speed only a truly happy child has, and threw herself into Marco's arms. He lifted her up, holding her tight, like he could shield her from everything bad in the world. "Lily, now I am really your daughter. Marco, you have always been a princess. Now it is just official on paper." The morning everything is different 5 weeks after the hearing, life inside the Lake Forest mansion had changed so much that if you took a photograph from the inside and set it next to a photograph from 5 weeks earlier, you would think they were two completely different places. That morning, Marco stood in the kitchen with his apron tied crooked, tongs in his hand, eyes locked on the toaster like it was the most dangerous enemy he had ever faced. And he lost again. 2 slices of bread popped up, blackened and scorched, smoke drifting toward the ceiling. Lily, Daddy M, burned the toast again. She sat in her familiar high chair, feet swinging, laughing so hard she nearly tipped her glass of milk. She was 6 now. Her birthday had been celebrated the week before with a butterfly. Cake Maggie ordered specially. Lily blew out the candles with Marco, Maggie, Raphael, Tony, and Sarah sitting around her. A small table, but fuller than any grand party this mansion had ever hosted. "Marco, I am improving. This one is only burned on one side. Last time it was both sides." "Lily, Daddy, that is 50% improvement." "Marco, exactly. Am I good or what?" Lily's laughter rang through the kitchen, slipped into every corner, every crack. filling the house with something money could never buy. Sarah had been discharged 2 weeks earlier. The transplant had been a success. Her body was responding well. Marco had arranged a clean, bright apartment for her only 10 minutes from the mansion. 2 bedrooms, natural light through large windows. A small balcony where Lily could plant flowers when she came to visit. Sarah had been appointed as the mansion's household manager. With a salary, she had to read 3 times on the contract because she could not believe her eyes. Comprehensive health insurance and a written guarantee from Marco that any employee in his system had the right to take sick leave without fear of losing their job. That morning, Sarah arrived early, wearing new office clothes, her walk still a little careful, but her eyes bright and her back straight in a way Marco had never seen from her before. She stepped into the kitchen, kissed Lily's forehead, then looked at Marco with a smile he was still not used to receiving. A smile with no fear, no shrinking, the smile of one equal thanking another equal. Sarah, good morning, family. And the word family came so naturally that no one even noticed it. Except Marco, who heard it and felt warmth bloom in his chest. At 10 in the morning, the gate buzzer rang. Tony checked the security camera and called Marco over. On the screen in front of the iron gate of 14. Your old boy stood with a backpack on his shoulder. Tall, thin, black hair falling over one side of his forehead. Gray eyes identical to Marco's. A face carrying a mix of anger and fear. The look of a child trying to appear tough while trembling on the inside. Dylan Valent. Marco stared at the screen, and the world paused for a beat. He had not known Dylan would come today. Their last call had ended with "I will think about it," followed by 2 weeks of silence. Marco had prepared himself for the possibility that Dylan would never call again. He had not prepared himself for the possibility that the boy would just appear at his gate. Marco opened the gate and stepped outside. Father and son faced each other on the stone path, only a few steps apart. But the real distance between them was 8 years of silence, 8 years of missed birthdays, 8 years of apologies left unsaid. Dylan looked at him with gray eyes full of conflict, anger not yet gone, hurt not yet healed, but also something else, small and fragile, that Marco recognized as hope. Marco began, but he did not get to finish. The front door flew open and Lily shot out like a tiny bullet. Barefoot, curls flying, a sheet of paper in her hand. Lily, Dylan, I am Lily. I drew a butterfly for you. I drew it yesterday because Daddy M said you might come, and I did not know when, so I drew it ahead of time. She stopped in front of Dylan, looked straight up at the teenager, who was twice her height, and held the butterfly drawing up with both hands. Wearing the brightest smile she had, Dylan looked down at her, at the colorful butterfly, at the clear green eyes that held no judgment, no resentment, only the pure joy of a child meeting a brother for the first time. Then Dylan looked at Marco, and 8 years of anger collided with the present moment. The present moment won. Dylan smiled, only a little, the corner of his mouth lifted. But it was the first smile Dylan had given anything connected to his father in 8 years. Dylan, it's a nice butterfly. Lily, I've got lots more. There are butterflies on the living room wall, too. Daddy M lets me draw on the wall because he says the wall is ugly. Dylan looked at Marco. Dylan, you really let her draw on the wall. Marco heard the word Dad from Dylan's mouth, and he had to bite the inside of his lip to keep his face from breaking open. Marco, that wall really is ugly. Dylan studied him for a moment, then stepped closer, not running, not throwing his arms around him, just one step closer, enough to shrink the distance between them from 8 years to the length of an arm. Dylan, I am still angry at you, but I am here. Marco, that is enough. Inside the kitchen, Maggie stood by the window watching. Saw Lily take Dylan's hand and pull him into the house while Marco followed behind. She turned to the wall, wiped her tears with the corner of her apron, then began making a 4th breakfast portion. A better man, a better world in the weeks that followed. Marco rolled out changes inside Valent Capital. He created a support fund for employees, health insurance, tuition help for their children, a counseling program. He pushed hard on legitimate real estate, expanded investment into affordable housing projects on the South Side, the same area where Sarah had once lived. Raphael came by the mansion one afternoon, looked around the living room, where the butterfly wall had expanded and now held new pieces signed by both Lily and Dylan. "Raphael, you are softening the whole organization." His tone no longer surprised, only something like acceptance. "Marco, I am making it better." The same sentence he had spoken weeks ago, but this time it carried a different weight. The weight of a man who had proved it with actions, not just words. That afternoon, Marco stood at the living room window, looking out at the garden where Lily was teaching Dylan how to draw butterflies on paper, both of them lying on their stomachs in the grass. Crayons scattered all around them. Marco's phone buzzed, an old name lit up on the screen. A partner from the earlier days, trying to pull him into an under-the-table deal he would not have thought twice about before. Marco answered, listened for 10 seconds, then looked out at the yard. Lily lifted a new butterfly drawing for Dylan to see, grinning. Dylan nodded. His mouth curved into a smile that grew a little wider every day. "Marco, I do not do that anymore." He ended the call. No explanation, no hesitation. He set the phone down and walked outside. "Lily, Daddy sit here, draw butterflies with us." Marco sat down on the grass, his designer clothes touching the ground. He picked up a crayon. Lily handed him a sheet of paper. He began to draw. A butterfly so ugly, Lily had to cover her mouth to laugh. Dylan shook his head. "Lily, you draw even worse than you tell stories." "Marco, I know, Marco, but I am here." Lily suddenly went serious, her head tilted, her green eyes studying him with a thoughtfulness way beyond her age. "Lily, Daddy do you regret picking up the phone that day, the day you called my mommy?" Marco set the crayon down in the grass. He looked at Lily, then at Dylan beside him, then back toward the mansion where Maggie was making tea in the kitchen and Sarah, who had just arrived, was hanging up her coat by the door. All these people, all this laughter, all this warmth. It had all begun with a phone call he made with the intention of firing a woman he had never truly seen. "Marco, that was the most important moment of my life, Lily, because that phone call is how I found you." Lily smiled, crawled forward, wrapped her arms around his neck, curls brushing his cheek, and whispered into his ear in a voice as light as butterfly wings. "Lily, back then I thought I was calling my daddy. Turns out I called the right one." Marco held his daughter, eyes drifting toward the Chicago horizon, painted gold in the autumn sunset. Dylan sat beside them, not hugging, but not walking away either, and the distance between him and his father shortened a little more every day. The autumn wind moved softly through the garden, carrying the scent of dry leaves and the promise of a winter warmer than any winter this mansion had ever known. For the first time in 36 years, Marco Valent felt real peace. Not the peace of power, not the peace of control. The peace of a father sitting on the grass with his daughter in his arms and his son beside him, knowing he was exactly where he belonged.